Hi, this is a short video on the basics of positioning taken from the classic textbook on marketing by Professor Philip Kotler and Kevin Lane Keller. So in this particular video, we are trying to explore what the concept of positioning is, what are the basic strategies that companies use to position, and we'll try to explore in detail some advanced positioning techniques in another video. So when we look at the marketing strategy as such, there are three basic elements to marketing strategy. We call it using the acronym STP, that is segmentation, targeting, positioning. And positioning is one of the most important element of the marketing strategy, and that is what we usually see in the communications from the brand. What exactly is positioning? We define positioning as the act of designing the company's offering and image to occupy a distinctive place in the mind of the target market. So there are certain terms which are very critical. One is, of course, the company's offering, the product. And when we talk about the product, we talk about the value proposition that the product offers. Second is that we are trying to look at the image of the product, the brand image, so as to say. So we want the offering and the image to occupy a very distinctive place. So that distinctive term is also very important. Now, distinctive means that the consumer should see your brand as something that is different from other competing products. So essentially, this is the task of communicating the value proposition in such a way that an enduring image is occupied in the mind of the customer, and that enduring image is also very distinctive in the sense that the consumer sees your brand as something that is very different from that of the competitor. So here, when we talk about the offering, one of the critical aspect of offering is the value proposition. Value proposition is actually the answer to the question why a consumer should buy a product. So when you are talking about positioning, the firm or the brand owner should first decide on what is my value proposition that I am offering to the consumer. So for example, you talk about Johnson's baby soap, which has an iconic status in the segment which it operates. The value proposition is that the product is clinically proven, it has safe ingredients, and it is best for the baby. And that value proposition is very clear, and all through its communication, the brand is able to communicate that value proposition to the customer. So when you start the activities that is concerning positioning, a brand owner should have very clear idea about what is the value proposition that it is offering to the consumer. So once you have that clarity, you will be able to communicate your positioning in a very effective manner. So when we talk about what are the strategies that firms use to create brand positioning, there are two major strategies or two major steps in the strategy. One is that first, as a brand, we need to define a frame of reference, and second is that once we have defined the frame of reference, we need to establish brand knowledge structures in terms of points of parity and points of difference. In this video, we'll start talking about defining a frame of reference, of which the competitive frame of reference is a very important strategy. So when we talk about frame of reference, one of the first steps that a marketer should look at is to create a frame of reference with regard to the target market. So that is where the segmentation and targeting plays a role. The first task in the positioning is, of course, you identify your target market. Why? Because the frame of reference is heavily dependent on the target consumer, and the way you are positioning the value proposition, the communication, everything will depend on the nature of consumers and also the need that the product serves. So as a marketer, you need to have a clear profiling of the consumer that you are trying to target. So that essentially is the prerequisite for a proper positioning strategy. The next step is, of course, once you have an idea about the target market, next is to create a competitive frame of reference. Now, the competitive frame of reference defines which are the brands a brand compete with, and therefore which brand should be the focus of competitive analysis. There are two aspects to this concept. One is that as a brand you define your competitor. So when you're doing a competitive analysis, you are doing a market environmental analysis or environmental study, you will identify a set of competitors, and you will be focusing on gathering information and intelligence about these competitors, and you will be responding to the actions of these competitors. That is one aspect of competitive frame of reference. In certain cases, defining a competitive frame of reference will also help you in telling the customer as to in which category your product belongs to, or you are also telling the customer that, hey, look, my brand is a competitor to this brand, so that means that you should consider my brand in the same league as this competitor brand. I'll give you an example. The example is a recent launch of Bajaj Dominar, which in its first campaign, what it tried to do is that it tried to make fun of the market leader, that is Enfield. So just watch the ad. I'll just So what essentially this ad talks about, the ad shows the elephant, which is actually a representative of the market leader Enfield. But if you look at Bajaj Dominar as such, the product does not look anything like an Enfield. So when you look at the product, the form itself, it doesn't look like an Enfield. So when a consumer looks at Dominar, the consumer may never put that Dominar in the category of Enfield, which is a premium, premium bike. So through this advertisement, what Dominar is actually doing is that it creates a frame of reference for the consumer, and it tells the consumer, saying that, see, when you're looking at Dominar, see this as something which as a product which competes with Enfield. It is not just another sports bike, and as you know, Bajaj has another bike, Pulsar, which is again one of its more major selling brands. So it doesn't want Dominar to be seen as a competitor to its own brand Pulsar. So it wants a consumer to put Dominar in the same frame in which you have Enfield. So establishing a competitive frame of reference helps in communicating your category involvement, your category membership to the customer, and also in the company's point of view, it will also help you to identify which are the competitors, and also which will give you a clarity as to which is the competitor that they should focus on, which is the competitor that they need to look at and respond to. And in that way, establishing competitive frame of reference would help the company a long way in establishing brand positioning. So to recap, what we have actually seen is that we have seen what is brand positioning, and we have also seen what is the two major initial steps for establishing brand positioning. One is that you need to have a clear idea about your value proposition, because that is what you are going to communicate to the customer. Second is that you need to identify who your target customer is, and once you have identified your target customer, then create a frame of reference. And the frame of reference, of course, we are talking about the competitor, and using the competitor frame of reference, you also will be able to tell the customer that some aspect of the category in which you belong. So that is the basics of positioning. So thank you for listening. Hope you have got some insights about this concept of brand positioning.